Next item on our agenda is the park testing presentation. Dr. Tyrrell.
That item was supposed to be around 7:25.
Ah, you know. I never put these times on this sheet anyway.
We've
Okay, so
gone through different stages with testing. As a school district, we opted for PARCC this year with the under the impression that PARCC would be here to stay. We all know that it's changed. Judy Keene is going to present the scores, and this time, Judy, would you like to begin?
sure.
Okay.
I'm going to stand up just because we've been sitting here for such a long time. Just to move along. Does anybody know what PARCC stands for? What is PARCC an acronym for? I don't even know if I know.
It's the periodic assessment of readiness for college and careers.
Partnership,
Partnership, okay.
assessment for readiness for college and career. No, readiness for college and careers. And that's what PARCC stands for. And we started out with 26 states that were together, and now there are 7 states that are left in the park. We're very fortunate in Hull that last year we elected as a school district to participate in PARCC because it gave us an opportunity to take an online assessment in grades 3 through 8. We feel that some of our scores are very positive and some of our scores need some improvement, but it is a new baseline. PARCC type tests are here to stay. In 2016, PARCC will be taking the PARCC again. In 2017, it'll be MCAS 2.0, which will be a combination of PARCC and MCAS, but the state will regain control of their testing assessment. But they still will be a member of PARCC. So it's really great that we were able to be in PARCC last year. We were able to get these results and we're able to move forward. So we feel like even though some of our scores are not what we expected, but we know the kind of work that we have to do. Oh, all done. Here we go. So tonight I'm going to be talking about the new scale and achievement levels, setting a new baseline, our baseline performance data, our median student growth. Oh shoot, I have to have a mic.
You can go, you want to go up to the podium? That mic?
I can. Sorry.
Sorry.
Just easy to see. Our median student growth and the next steps that we'll be taking as a district. So as you can see on the slide up there, PARCC has 5 levels. And whereas the MCAS had 4 levels: advanced, proficient, needs improvement, warning, and failing. And the scaled score has changed also. So in the PARCC now we have 5 different levels, and you can see that level 4 and 5 are very similar to what we're used to referring to as advanced and proficient. But one thing that you will see is that the PARCC is a much more difficult assessment than the MCAS. Oh, sorry about that. So if you look at this slide here, this is a slide that's comparing the PARCC scores with the MCAS. So this is the percentage of students that were able to reach 4 and 5, which is meeting expectations in the state, and MCAS being able to be proficient or higher, and the difference here. You will see that on the grade 4 test with PARCC did better on this test, and you also see on the MCAS here that on the PARCC here and the MCAS, the difference was quite significant here. So overall, the PARCC was a much more difficult test. In the districts that took MCAS, 10% of them had a lower amount of students that were in the economically disadvantaged subgroup. So people that took PARCC did have a higher number of students that were in that subgroup. So we're setting a new baseline with PARCC, and what that means is that since we've had MCAS for all these years, we're starting out with PARCC. So we have new scores in PARCC, and it's a more difficult test. Questions are asked in different ways. There's not as many multiple choice questions, and it requires students to really be. Oh, thanks. It requires students to, I guess I did sit too long. It requires students to really use critical thinking skills. It also demands that students explain their answers. They have to take evidence from what they're reading. Oftentimes they're reading from 2 sources, and they have to pull together evidence to support their answer. They also have to do this in mathematics. This year, any district that took PARCC, you were held harmless, meaning that your accountability level could not change for your school or your district if you had 1 or more schools that took PARCC. And in 2016, that'll be the same again. And in 2017, when all of the state takes the MCAS 2.0, every district will be held harmless. Now, there's a lot of talk this spring that the MCAS is going to look more like PARCC. They are going to be adding MCAS questions in PARCC. So districts are wondering, well, how come we're not going to be held harmless if we're taking PARCC and if we're taking MCAS and there are PARCC scores in here? And so what there is chatter about is that they will give those districts a score for MCAS-like questions, and they'll give them a separate score for PARCC-like questions. But they still will have accountability status. They won't be held harmless for their district. So we are fortunate that we'll have 2 years. We've had last year, we'll have 16, and we'll have 17, being able to held harmless to really improve our scores where we need to. The other interesting, in 2017 with MCAS 2.0, as part of the task force that is creating this test, they're going to be looking at, one of the questions is whether all 3rd grade students across the state should take the test paper and pencil. And that's one thing you will see with our results, where we have our one-to-one platform with our iPads, where kids have technology deeply integrated into their curriculum, our scores were better. At the elementary school, where the integration is not as intense, our scores were not as strong. So it looks like next year we're going to be moving towards paper pencil until we can really improve that integration of technology at the elementary school, because the kids really have to be using it every day, not just one time a week in a technology classroom. There's no data on whether paper pencil schools did better on paper pencil than computer-based testing. The DSE is not analyzing that data, but if you were a district that had 2 schools or 3 schools, 3 elementary schools, and 1 did paper pencil, 1 did computer, you could do that yourself, that analysis. So moving forward, here's our baseline data. So grade 3 for ELA did absolutely wonderful. If you look here, this is 4 and 5 combined. The state is here, so we were above the state where we want to be in here. Level 5 above the state, level 4. Level 3 where they're approaching expectations. We were even with the state here with meeting expectations. Partially meeting expectations and not meeting expectations, we were below the state. So as you look at these slides, we want to be below the state in level 1, 2, and 3, or even here. So this is the really perfect profile of where we want to be with our scores in grade 3. The next slide is grade 4 for ELA. There's some good news and some disappointing news on this slide, but overall, it's not too bad. Grade 5, this was not the best news that we hoped for grade 5, but we know that we have to do some work here, especially in the area of technology, and we'll just be moving forward and working on it. In grade 6, very nice news here with being above the state in level 5, level 4, below in level 3, 2, and a little bit of more work here in level 1, but this is really great improvement here and a very nice baseline for us to have. Grade 7 ELA, this is like fantastic. In ELA 2 years ago, we went to a model where the students have a double English class with the same teacher, so reading and writing is taught together, more of like a team model, and we're really seeing the results of this effort here in grade 7. So very good news for grade 7. And grade 8, I do not know what happened to the slide. I had technical difficulties, and Tony just mentioned that it was gone, but I will add it before it's posted. But they had good scores in grade 8, too. So grade 3, again, grade 3, very nice profile here. Above the state here in level 4 and 5. Above. Nice job. Really, really beautiful work there in grade 3 with those students for their first time taking a test, and they did take a computer-based test there. Grade 4 math, very close here with the state. very close here. We need to move some of these kids that are approaching meeting their expectations. This was very nice, and here was very good. So overall, very good in grade 4. In grade 5 math, this we have, well, level 4, level 3. We have some work to do here. I know the teachers were very disappointed, but yes. Yeah, the purple is the district, and this is the state. Okay? We're the purple. In grade 6 math, this is our last year was our first year with the new math curriculum. So we did see, we're on our way with a positive, moving on a positive trend here for grade 6. And hopefully we'll see even better results next year. We did add a strategies and intervention class for grade 6 math. So that'll be helping with these scores too. Grade 7 math, very strong here with this level 4 being above the state. And here, we need to do some more work here with approaching, but overall, very good scores. So more good news. In grade 8 math, very nice trend here, some more work having to work on here, but doing well in level 4 and catching up to the state there. So even though these are baseline scores, they are some very, very positive news, and we know where we do have to do more work. So the next part of this presentation, and Eric was one that talked to us about these slides here, was that we have something called DART districts, and they're the districts that are most similar to us. So instead of comparing with Norwalk, Cohasset, Hingham, we are compared with districts that have the same size, same economic diversity, subgroups, and there are 10 districts that are in our DART. But what we did was we pulled out the 7 districts that did PARCC. They are not putting PARCC information into the DARTs, but what we did was we took a look at our percentage of students that were meeting expectations. That's level 4 and 5, and we compared it with these other districts here. And you can see for mathematics, we were second in our DART. So that was something to be very, very proud of for our first year administrating the PARCC. And then for English language arts, you can see that we were the top of our DART in these 7 communities for meeting expectations in English language arts. Now the next area where you can compare PARCC and MCAS is with the median growth, because you're going back and you're looking at a similar peer group, and then you're tracking the progress from there. And when we look at we're tracking this, we want to be between the 40 to 60 percentile is where we're showing like average growth, 40 to 60. So we really want to be right in here. You can see that they were almost there in grade 4, but our growth went down last year. But again, that's our new baseline to start from. In grade 5, this was very disheartening for these teachers, because you can see that they've been very, very strong with their growth all along. And then last year with PARCC, they did not have the kind of growth that they wanted. So I'm sure that'll just be a one-year situation. Now, grade 6 language arts, and this is where they're using the technology every single day. Those other grades they weren't. The growth was phenomenal there for grade 6. In grade 7, again, we're having that model where the kids are having the same teacher twice a day, but you can just see that we did it this year and now this year, and really making some nice growth. Nice trend there in grade 7. In grade 8, they are almost there with the language arts. This was the new teachers that started here, but you can see that our trend is going back up again with the PARCC. So we do have a lot to be proud of here for taking this new assessment, and I can't say enough that it is a much more difficult test than MCAS was. Grade 4 math, they're almost right here in the 40 to 60 percentile. Grade 5 math, another disappointment there for grade 5. Grade 6, upward trend is happening there with the mathematics. Again, we had our first year with a new curriculum last year. And grade 7 has always been strong. They're still in here, but a new baseline, and like I said, hopefully we'll be back up there next year. In grade 8 has always been consistently with nice growth in that 40 to 60 percentile range. So what do we do with these assessment results? One of the things we do, is I know that people that do have children that took PARCC in grades 3 through 8, just like with MCAS, we still have MCAS in grade 5, 8, and 9 for science, and we have it in ELA and math for in grade 10 for the graduation determination, and that will be through the class of 2019. But one thing is that with those reports, it's important for us to be talking with each other and monitoring student progress. I know during the advisory periods today at the middle school, in each advisory period, the advisor went over the students' results with them, looking at their strengths, trying to build on those strengths. And they'll be doing that in grade 5 and grade 4. I believe Ms. Capadonna is going to have the teachers do that too, just letting these students know what are your strengths, what are going to be working on. We use it to improve the curriculum. What adjustments do we need to make with our alignment, accountability levels I talked about earlier. It's part of the teachers' evaluations, their student impact rating, which is based on growth, and the graduation requirement. So what are our next steps? I spoke a lot about the computer-based assessment. The middle school has elected they wish to stay with the computer-based assessment since they did so well with it, and it is integrated into their curriculum. And the elementary school, Mrs. Capadonna has been pulling the teachers and talking with them. And until we can build the capacity to integrate the curriculum there, they're moving towards paper pencil assessment. The other thing that we noticed at the middle school that the teachers observed was the special education students, which is one subgroup where we do need to make some growth. They went very quickly through their assessments. And we did learn that in their IEPs, you can have an accommodation that they can have a paper pencil test. So we're going to be looking into, is that a better mode for some of our special education students to be taking? Because we want to try to narrow that proficiency gap with the special ed students. Strengthen the integration of technology into the curriculum. And we did start that this year. Carrie Ryan, who's here tonight, has been working with an iPad lab and going into the classrooms and working with the teachers on with a smart board and doing some projects with iPads. But in order to take a computer-based test, we really need to start with the 5th graders. They need to have an iPad or a Chromebook or something with them all day long doing their writing assignments in order to take it online. And this is the conversations I talked about using the scores. If you have a score report and you don't understand it, please call us and we can explain it to you since the categories are new. Continue to support the teachers. I know that the thing with PARCC, which is different from MCAS, is that we do not have itemized, test results back for each student. We have their overall scores, but they've released tests, but we can't do the kind of work that we used to dive deep into to do item analysis on the test. So I know that the teachers are going to be doing some exercises just on the overall categories, looking from the students from last year, looking at the students in front of them, and see, do they need to do more work with informational text? Is it mathematical reason? Is it written expression or vocabulary? So we're going to working with the data that we do have, which is limited right now. And continue to discuss the best practices to narrow the proficiency gaps. We do have some gaps that we've had some lengthy discussions about between our subgroups, such as special education, economically disadvantaged, which is a new term, which doesn't just mean that you are in that category because you're free and reduced lunch. It means that you may participate in a SNAP program, Department of Children and Families, transitional housing, Medicaid, and I can't remember the 5th one. I have it written down there. But it is a 5th group that is the economically disadvantaged group. And we need to look at how are our boys scoring compared to our girls. And as a leadership team, we started to talk about this. And one of the activities we're going to be doing is on our early release day, January 12th, we're going to be spending the afternoon with teachers, really looking at who are these groups. And we need to do a Venn diagram because some of these kids are Title I and they're special ed and they're a boy. and then or they're just special ed. So we need to really look at these students and what do we need to do to reach all of those students with our strategies. We need to look at what strategies we have in place to narrow the gap. I mean, we have our an RTI program as far as with our Title I program where we rank students, we're taking data, and we're moving students constantly in and out of that program as they make benchmark. We've worked with our teachers around the importance of a safe climate in their classroom, making sure they develop a strong relationships with their students so they feel safe to learn. So there's many things we need to do. Family outreach, early intervention. You know, do we need to have an all-day 4-year-old kindergarten program, 4-year-old pre-K program? So we do that early intervention for some of the students that need it rather than a half-day program. So there's lots of research out there. It's a national trend that you do have these gaps, but we want to be able to look at each student, and we have the luxury here of being a small district, so we can do that. So that's the work that we're going to be doing on January 12th to see what can we do more, what do we have in place, what can we do more to reach all of these students and to have them meet their expectations on the PARCC assessment or MCAS 2.0. So, turned it upside down. In closing here, our students are just as smart, but the assessment is different, and the assessment is more difficult, and we have a new baseline, and we have some good news, and we have some areas that we need to move forward with and to improve. And in time, our scores will improve in those areas. Those teachers are diligently working with us to make that happen, and they've had good scores in the past, and we'll get back there. So I thank you for your attention, and if there's any questions from the school committee, sorry I had my back to you there.
That's fine. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
I don't know, not really, but it's kind of like, it seems like it's a mixed bag, really. It seems like the elementary school, which I actually thought would usually, in the past, they've fared pretty well, kind of went the other way. But then the middle school, which I think last year they kind of struggled a little bit, now they're like popped up. So it's kind of like a moving target. But certainly we definitely want these to improve. But I think the one good thing that you had here was comparing us against like schools, which I think we compared very well to those schools. And I think, again, I think it's the first time through the test. People a little bit, it's a new test, so people aren't as familiar with it. I think if you've figured out that it's probably better to use the pen and paper with some of those students, then that's probably a good thing. So I think that there's some steps that we could take as a district to try to improve some of the scores. But it's a mixed bag, really. It's first time through. It's kind of hard to compare, really.
And I agree with what you said about the elementary school. That's why I think it's like a one-time. Some of those girls scored, it's a one-time. They did it on a computer-based test. They did not have great experience with that. They did it, and they went down. They're used to the paper pencil. That's how they do most of their work all day long, and we didn't teach them, and we didn't assess them in the mode that they're familiar with. So I think we're going to see that go right back up, and you'll see the scores at the middle school. I mean, there's been so much change that Mr. Ribnak, with his leadership, has been able to do with that building, with new staff and modeling. We've been working hard on different strategies, and so it's starting to really show its growth and improvement, and it's very exciting, really exciting. So.
So when we move to MCAS 2.0, it will still be aligned with the Common Core, so that.
Yeah, the Common Core since 2011 has been it's part of our ELA and our mathematics frameworks from the DESE. So we've been working on that and aligning it from 2011. Christine Capadonna and myself and Mary Merrigan, one of the curriculum coaches, we met today, and I think Deb McCarthy's here tonight, can talk about it too. We're always trying to circle back to those curriculum maps that we have. Is our pacing on track? We're looking at that. We have a new vocabulary that we've launched in third, fourth, and fifth grade, a vocabulary program. We have our math vocabulary, so we're constantly looking at that. And forgot the rest of your question.
I don't need to. The other thing I just wanted to say is that it's just it's so disappointing, the state on all of this stuff. I mean, they kind of sold us this bill of goods on everybody's moving to PARCC, and we put all this stuff in place, and now we find out, we'll be held harmless, and we're only going to do PARCC one more year, and then it's going to go to MCAS 2.0. So I feel like we're in limbo, and generally these results are given to the district and the teachers and the leadership, you know, in August or
Right.
September, and here we are in December. Not through any
Right.
fault of our fault, through the state's fault, that we're expected to drive instruction for a test that they're gonna take
Exactly.
in March, you know, on data that we're just really
But we are gonna
receiving.
do, one thing that changed is with the park this year, is that they're only gonna have an end-of-year assessment that'll
Okay.
be after April. So last year, they did the performance-based assessment near like January, February.
Right.
And then they did an end of year, and people just said that's way too much testing. So now it's gonna be after April vacation, one testing session. So that is much better, and will give us some more instruction time. But that's why with the grade levels, we're gonna look at the data, and we're gonna pick on one area we really think we need to improve on, because we
Right.
can't do it all, it's so late right now. So we
Right.
have to, and we have a vocabulary initiative that we're already working on, maybe we'll go with that, or maybe the teachers will find they wanna do something else. But as far as moving to the MCAS 2.0, we're already there, we've done PARCC, it's a hard test, so it's not gonna be a shock to us. I mean, there's some districts that are moving to, that are MCAS, that are deciding to move to PARCC this year, so they can have a year to be held harmless and to have an opportunity to get in the game and have experienced that more difficult test.
I would like to maybe at some point hear from you guys as far as pushing technology down. I mean, we had the iPad initiative at the middle school, and we pushed it up to the high school.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know what the feelings are as far as kids in grades level 3, 4, and 5 is. I mean, I think they all have probably devices at home, but just as a district, I mean, if that's an impediment to them doing better on tests
We've
by
been-
not having access to these types of things,
Right.
what can we do as a board?
So we're gonna have to
through
do
a
something
budgetary
by
process?
2017, for 18, at least for 5th and 4th grade, if we can still do paper pencil for the 3rd grade, to really look at that. We have our technology committee that we've been meeting about every 2 weeks, and we've really been looking at some issues with technology, policies, all kinds of things, so we have been talking about it.
The middle school, I was thrilled to see those scores and the
Isn't that
growth.
great?
I know that there's
Yeah,
been
that
a
is
lot
so
of.
It's so happy for,
Well,
yeah,
I know there's
it's
been a
really
lot of good stuff, and I do agree. I think the 5th grade stuff is probably just an aberration, and I know how hard they all work and to
Yeah.
make things better, so
Exactly.
that was it for me.
No, I would, echo those comments. Obviously, I think it is a bit of a mixed bag. This whole process, moving from MCAS to PARCC to PARCC, or MCAS 2.0 is certainly could have been done more smoothly, and it hasn't been timely, but hopefully in the end, in the next few years, we'll be sort of back on track. Obviously, the elementary school scores weren't what we were looking for, but I probably one of the most one of the people who's been more than who's been pointing out the issues with the middle school, and I want to specifically congratulate Mr. Rivnak and the entire teaching staff at the middle school, because there's been a lot of work, and I know we've been waiting for some of the payoff,
We have.
if you will,
We have.
and it is great to see a real sort of first installment of that. I mean, it's
Something to celebrate.
absolutely. It's not just studying for a test. I mean, the matters, the changes in the middle school over the last 4 years have been, kind of night and day, in terms of the staff turnover, the program that's been, the programs that have been restored, and Mr. Rivnak and the new push of leadership, Mr. The assistant principal, Mr. Kelly, lost his name. There's been a lot of work at the middle school.
We've
And-
extended the curriculum coaches, Joy and Mary there, all through grade 8, so they're over there more often too, doing that coaching meeting with the grade levels. They have a 7-period day now, so they have their collaboration time with each other in the middle of the day, which makes a big difference. They have time to talk with each other, and they can have consistent meetings. And I will have to say, Mr. Rivnak has been very open with working with myself and everybody about meeting, what are we gonna do next? How are we gonna do? Did that work? Didn't it work? And constantly working together, so it's wonderful to see.
Now, for all of PARCC's limitations, I did find some interesting notes in some of the information that's available on the DESE website that we, at least the public and the school committee, hasn't been privy to in the past. And I don't know if it's really been packaged the way it was this year for the administration and the teachers as it had in the past. I don't know. I had kind of put together just a couple of PDFs. I don't know if we could put those up just to, I have some questions, or
I'd have to
Mr.
get my
Devine, I
notes.
think. Because this whole sort of announcement of these PARCC scores came out, the state, on November 10th. And what was sort of the big Boston Globe story at the time was, you know, everybody, how did your school district fare on PARCC? And the number that came out at that point was simply the average for grades 3 through 8 on math and the average for English. And what came out at the time and caused a bit of tumult, the state average for a district 3 through 8 was on English language arts was 60% came in level 4 and 5, and our town came in at 58%. In terms of math, it was 52%, and then our district came in at 48%. But that is sort of that, you know, one like perspective. It's almost like a satellite photo, how far away you're really looking at it. As you presented, you know, in your, you know, as what came out later, breaking it down by grade. And then what I particularly wanted to talk about was, if you could just flip to the next page. There's breakdowns by district.
Literacy.
Actually, just for time, could you just go to page 4 on that?
What's the top say?
It's the Lillian Jacobs School scores for pre-K through 5. Yeah, that one. These are basically the subgroup, the numbers for all of our subgroups for the whole school, and then the subgroups not broken down by grade, but for the school as a whole, so it's grades 3 through 5. And there were just a couple of things that I've already sat down and talked to Dr. Terrell about this that kind of caught my attention, and I think kind of really help explain a lot of the challenges that we have at the district and why things on many fronts are the way that they are. We had 200 students from the Jacobs School take this PARCC exam for, this first one is English Language Arts. That's 99% of the kids took the test. We had, as I said, that 51% came in level 4 or level 5. If you look, economically disadvantaged kids, out of that 200, 60 of them are economically disadvantaged. And as you explained, Dr. Keene, Ms. Keene.
You're promoting her too?
Yeah, economically disadvantaged is a student participated in one or more of the following state-administered programs, which are SNAP, which are commonly known as food stamps, temporary aid for families with dependent children, which is commonly called welfare, involved with DCF foster care, or participate in mass health, otherwise known as Medicaid. So we have 31, I'm sorry, which one? This page. 30% of those students at the, in grades 3 through 5 are economically disadvantaged. And whereas the school as a whole came in at 51% level 4 and 5, those kids who have many additional challenges in their lives came in at 38%, a significant difference. If you look down towards the bottom, there's 140 kids who are non-economically disadvantaged, and their average was 57%. So there's a huge gap in the test scores of those kids just based on that, the clear and obvious challenges that they have in their lives, which we have in substantial number in this district as opposed to many of our surrounding neighbors, as you pointed out. And particularly not only on the high end, but there's particular concern on the low end. Kids that scored, the percentages of kids that scored in levels 1 and 2. For economically disadvantaged kids, it's 38% of them came in at either not meeting or only partially meeting their expectations, as opposed to 10% of non-economically disadvantaged kids. Another anomaly that really stuck out to me was the difference in gender, just gender alone being the subgroup. Our boys of all types in grades 3 through 5 came in at 39% scoring in levels 4 and 5, as opposed to girls scored at 66%. When I pointed this out to my wife, that was her response.
We're wicked smart, you know.
Just from looking at other districts, there is, girls are clearly doing better on these tests. But the disparity, I said girls are clearly doing better on these tests, but the disparity in this district is pretty extreme. This is just for English Language Arts. If you go down to the next page, it's the math scores. And it's the same story. You know, you always hear this, girls can't do STEM. Well, they certainly know math. 58% of the girls were levels 4 and 5 in math, and 47% of the boys were. You look at the numbers for the economically disadvantaged kids. 52% of all students were 4 and 5. It was 32%, 20% lower for economically disadvantaged, versus 60% for non-economically disadvantaged. Similar scores coming out of the middle school on the next page, if you wouldn't mind.
So this is the work that we're going to be doing on January 12th with the teachers.
Could you just roll to the next page? I'm sorry. Just really quick. I don't want to take up too much time. This is, it's kind of,
Yeah, it's online.
this is all right off of the DESE website. It's in this master spreadsheet that they have where you
Yeah,
can actually
everything in
pull up
every district in the
every
state.
single district, every single school.
It's always there, but they made, with the park, they did all the color coding and they made it.
Yeah, in terms of the, similar story, we had the school scored 64% on the English language arts. The state average was 63%. The non-economically disadvantaged kids, which are 68.5% of the kids, they actually scored 71. Whereas the economically disadvantaged kids scored at 48%. And I just want to point this out, not to disparage anyone, but the point is we have significant challenges in this district, and not to be too blunt about it, but this is one of the reasons why education costs more in Hull, because we have challenges that many of our neighbors don't have that cost money to try to, give these kids who have significant challenges in their lives the education that they deserve. And but then the boys, I don't know what their problem is.
They're boys.
The girls,
You say they're girls.
the girls scored 80% in level 4 and 5 at the middle school, whereas the boys were 47%.
Eric, if it were
Yeah.
not such a serious matter, I could make a million quips. It's very serious, and we're quite surprised at the disparity in the scores between boys and girls. It would be great humor, but it's not funny.
No, absolutely, no, and I don't mean to sound like I'm berating anyone.
No,
I'm just
no.
looking through this information. These are things that jump right out to me.
We're quite surprised at it.
Yeah, and I don't doubt that there are actions being taken, but I wanted to point some of these out to the public, because I think it really does make clear, it puts right in black and white some of the challenges that we have as a district that are, through no fault of anyone in the school district. There's a lot of kids in our district that have a lot of needs that many of our neighbors don't have.
Can I just say,
Sure.
we've talked about this as a board, and I know that the administrators have used this term. We're a suburban district with urban problems. And, when I looked at that DESE stuff, literally, Hingham has 4% in that category. Cohasset has 4%. Norwell has 4%. Hanover has 8%. Weymouth has 30%. Hull is at 37% of our students are in these categories. And they deserve
It's
every,
higher, too.
it's,
higher.
I'm sure it is, because I think people
We
don't.
think it's 42%.
Because people don't report things. So we are a suburban district with urban problems, and I believe we are keeping pace with our much more affluent communities that we are neighboring, which, when you look, that's not who DESE would be comparing us against, given the socioeconomic challenges that face us.
And just to
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
give you some evidence as to what you're saying, Stephanie, when you see this here where it says transitional to CPI, I know it's small, that's a composite performance index, and if we're on target, we should be hitting 75. So we're doing pretty good with all students, high needs, economically disadvantaged, we're at 80.9. So anytime you get 75 here, students with disabilities, you need some significant work there. White with 90.5, male, but still, here we have Title I students, non-disabled, but, so we are working really hard, and we are hitting that 75, that CPI benchmark.
Oh, microphone. You weren't talking to the microphone?
We are hitting that benchmark, 75 CPI.
It was good.
I get so excited about it.
Does classroom testing and curriculum reflect some of these same trends, or is this an anomaly to this particular test? Does anybody look? I don't know what the students are.
I think the information that we have is the information that's been made available by the state and by this PARCC testing. I can say as a parent, you know, I got my son who was in 3rd grade last year, I got his just total score in the mail last week. But as you say, the teachers and the administration still don't have even the breakdown of how he did question by question. So-
Right.
And that's something that, quite frankly, they had on MCAS, you know, you would have back in July.
Correct.
And you would see, you know, one of the benefits of standardized testing is you can see, well, what did, you know, is there some topic that the kids all didn't get? And that's something you can emphasize during the next school year, and the fact that it's now, you know, December, and we still don't have that information, and, you know, we'll be taking the next round of PARCC in, you know, 5 months. It's not optimal. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why the Board of Education decided to move away from this more national PARCC, and we're going to be administering this similar test ourselves.
Right, that we
Much
can
more
have control over. Just to answer your question, I think we have district-determined measures that we give at all levels, and I think if the teachers really looked at their scores, they're going to see, you know, that the Title I student that's getting reading, if it's a reading assessment, it's going to be lower, and that's how we take them for services. But it probably does figure out, but I can't say that for sure, but I'm think it would shake out that way.
But
That's a lot of time to sit and go through it and to try to do that level of detail.
But at some point, you would hope that the administrators and the teachers will have every student's, you know, how they did on every question from this whole exam, and so you'll be able to see it, and it all the way, whatever level you want, kind of how this all worked
I
out.
think the problem they
will
have
we
with the
though, or
PARCC
no?
is that they did,
Not the
they did,
public.
with
No,
the
no, no,
PARCC,
no, I didn't mean we.
they
I
did
meant-
so many different exams, they have so
Yeah, I
many
don't think
different
we will.
versions of it, they have this huge file is what they tell us, so it's hard for them to convert all that data and which individual test did each student take to give you that, so it's pretty complicated.
So do you think that you will get
I think
individual?
eventually,
Like, okay, but
maybe
probably not for like.
June, who knows? When we're getting
walking
when
out
we're
the
getting
door.
the 2016 scores.
Or we
Any
used
other-
to be able to go question by question, see where we had to shore things up.
Well, you know, even when MCAS was new, there were a lot of bugs that had to be fixed, and teachers weren't getting their results. But I find it very telling that we're only 2 years into PARCC and they're already changing it. It's not working. So, and I think it would be really nice if they had teachers involved in how these tests were designed, because I don't think they're getting a whole lot of input from the people who are being the change agents. So I just find this very frustrating, as usual, that the Department of Education just says, hey, do it, and then you just have to do it without a lot of preparation ahead of it. But MCAS, we had all of those growing pains as well. But 2 years in, and we're just abandoning that version of it, and we'll just do this now. I just don't know where we're going to head with another new version coming in. You know,
I think it's going to be a lot like PARCC what we have now. We're going to see, it's going to be difficult.
With some MCAS built in,
Yeah,
kind of,
it's gonna be-
sort of.
It's going to be similar to what we had. The MCAS 2.0 is going to be very similar to what we have in PARCC. So if you're taking PARCC, then your kids are adjusting to that. You're aligning your curriculum. So if you're teaching the standards, not to the test, but you're teaching the standards, then your kids should do well on the test.
And do you think they're going to come back with the results any earlier?
We hope so, because
I
it's,
wonder.
it
I'm
really
frustrated.
doesn't
I'm
do well
frustrated
for
with it. I'm
planning.
frustrated with the whole
Absolutely.
thing.
So the teachers are too. You feel
Yeah.
terrible. They can't, we have some scores we can, categories that we can
Right.
sort of,
Right.
put kids in to see if there's a category that we can improve on or not,
Right.
so.
I went to the Massachusetts Association of School Committees conference recently, and there's a delegate meeting, and there was 312 of the 314 districts present, and it was pretty unanimous there that the kind of dissension around PARCC, that they wanted to put forth a resolution for a moratorium as a whole collective body. I know that wasn't on the list for the resolutions then, so they only put that on as like a side vote based on Robert's rules, like parliamentary reasoning. And so it was just really interesting to hear all these different communities from all over Massachusetts talk about the experience with this test, and not from the students' perspective, and getting kind of information from them. I know in my job and every day, for some of the students working, what happens when you're doing something pen to paper, which is what they learn when they learn to write. When they learn to write, it's pen to paper. To then do something from, right to the screen is a very different experience. And I don't know how many people have looked at some of the online PARCC tests. I think it's a great thing to take a look. having to scroll between tabs, having to scroll down. It's stressful. I mean, I know if anyone took, I mean, I'd love to have some sort of like gathering where everyone could just kind of try it out and see what that feels like as a kid. Kathleen will be at Kathleen's house. No, but it's just a very interesting experience, and I think we should all like kind of do that and see how our kids are feeling, because I know that there seems to be this weird feeling around this, and Judy, maybe you can speak to this a little bit, that kids left Park feeling kind of like disenchanted by the whole thing. Like our higher end kids felt confused and unsure about that, is kind of what I've heard from some parents. And it's kind of interesting to then have have so many high scores. I think it gives a confusing message to the person taking the test. We've all taken tests. You kind of have a sense of how well you did when you left a test. You know, I think I did well, I think I did, you know, not so well, I should have tried harder, or however. But to feel like you don't really even know, and to be a high-achieving student in that class, especially as you're getting older, I think there's a disconnect there. And I have a question of, you know, what do they think about Park? And should we, as an organization, kind of, you know, advocating for our kids, like, should we be talking to them and our parents and seeing how they feel about that?
A lot of the
going
kids-
forward to the Department of, you know, the Board of Education and figuring out, hey, is it just a Park 2.0? Like, what is this? Are we really, you know, I think there's some good things about Park, and then I think there's some not so good things about Park, you know, and kind of feeding off, like, you know.
A lot of
Marian said
the
was
student, a lot of what I've read from the DESE, students that were interviewed preferred the online test better because it was quicker, it was, you know, they felt it was, you know, they could just get it done and they were over with, and they just liked it better than the paper pencil.
I do know, and I'd like to
That's
say
just
this
anecdotally.
the Board of Department or Board of Education's chairman is also affiliated and sits on the board for Park. So sometimes it makes me question the validity of the information that's pushed out there if kids
Right.
loved it this much. I mean, I'd like to hear from our kids and our teachers.
So are you suggesting that we
Have like an open,
interview our children
Yeah.
that took the test?
just to kind
You
of
may
get
have
a
done,
feeling of
Tony,
what
did
they
you
thought.
talk to your kids about what they thought about taking the test? Didn't you do that, or?
Last
Spring?
year, we kind of did an informal survey, and the kids all came forward, I shouldn't say all, the majority came forward and said it was, they thought it was a harder test.
For a harder test, and then did they talk about the
We
computer?
didn't go into whether or not they liked it computer-based or not, we didn't discuss that.
Right.
Just be, you know, more kind of directed questions of what that felt like to just navigate that interface on an iPad or on a computer.
Might be able to
and
do
how
some of that during small groups and advisory, make that a topic.
For us to share that information forward too.
Anything else?
Any other
Nice
questions?
job.
or-
Nice job there, Judy.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Judy.